This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On the last podcast of 2022, I chat with Irish artist Elizabeth Cope about her solo exhibition, which runs until the 15th of January at the Visual Centre at the Carlo Studio Gallery. Elizabeth, who's 70 years young, chats about her exhibition, The Palpable Bump on the Bridge of the Nose, and the accompanying book. She talks about her process, the inspiration for her work, and how some of the often unusual paintings come together, including Giraffe Man, appearances by Rocky the Lobster, and the Menopause series. Elizabeth also gives some advice for aspiring artists and hobbyists, and she says, the struggle is the secret of success. Let's hear from Elizabeth. Elizabeth Cope, how are you keeping?
Very well, Greg. How are you keeping?
I'm really good. A huge welcome back to the Win Happy podcast. This is, I think, appearance number 3.
Yes. Well, I was so pleased to speak with you down in a little cottage for the first. I think you were my first Zoom meeting person, and I really enjoyed speaking to you then. It's a couple of years ago now.
It was in the middle of that crazy COVID time when we were all locked down.
Yes.
And we started to do some of the things that we were trying to get around to for a long time. And I think that was a phone call about you and your craft and the importance of being online. You know, it was such a huge issue at that stage for you and so many other businesses. But now, thankfully,
yes,
we're having a conversation about an actual an exhibition where real people can come and chat together and get together and have conversations looking at your wonderful paintings.
Well, thank you very much. We've had great response from people, Greg. In fact, a man called Ross Kavanagh did a video of my work practice, and it has had, to date, I know it's nothing in comparison to your son Brendan's practice, but it has had 41,000 views.
My God, that's fantastic.
I think it's amazing. I don't know how it happens, but it's what young people do today.
And, you know, on the subject of young people, you're young in spirit, definitely. I believe you're 70 now, isn't that right?
Yes, I was 70 in June, and I'm very happy to be 70 because I don't have any fear of anybody or anything. And my body isn't as great as it was, but it's great to be confident. And I think being a painter probably has the longest apprenticeship ever. It's definitely been 52 years for me, so I'm still only starting now.
Yeah, I think having a solo exhibition of your paintings, your sculptures, and various objects is a fantastic celebration of that age and where you were. And that exhibition, it's in Carlo in the Studio Gallery, and that runs until the 8th of January.
Yes, it's in the Visual Centre. It's a very large space, and it's so nice to be able to exhibit in my own hometown, if you like.
The girl is coming home.
Yes, it's really lovely, and people are coming, and people I grew up with and people whom I've painted 40 years ago are coming back to me, which is really nice.
And Elizabeth, the name of the exhibition, what are you calling it?
It's called The Palpable Bump on the Bridge of the Nose, and it all started when the young chap called Benjamin Stafford, who is the curator, he took over because Emma Lucy had a baby, and she's a brilliant woman as well. And he came and picked out the paintings, and we were walking up from the studio, and I was talking about the nose, you know, when you think of smell and nose, and I just put my hand, I said, if I may touch your nose, Benjamin, I said, you have the nose of a connoisseur, the shape of the nose. And he, because of that word, he used the word, the palpable bump on the bridge of the nose. So it was really he made it up, if you like.
Was that a strange feeling for you, handing over the reins of the curation of the exhibition?
No. I said, no. I said, I've done the paintings. Now you do the hanging. This is your job. This is not my field. So I let him choose whatever he liked. Now, admittedly, I would have chosen maybe some different paintings to what he chose, but the secret was that I let him do it, and that was the right thing to do. And I think because of the big space, he was able to hang them. He hung them very, very well. For some reason, he just had a gift for doing it.
And the actual exhibition itself, like you have so much work, so many different pieces, and some of them have very, very big themes. Even
Yes.
placing those in the gallery, like it's a beautiful space. Did you leave Benjamin at it, or
Totally.
were you part of that process? No?
None whatsoever. All I was able to tell him, well, these three paintings stay together. These two paintings stay together, side by side. But he just had an instinct about how to place them.
And even the sequence that you get to experience them.
Yes.
Was it strange for you seeing that for the first time?
Well, I must admit I was very impressed in how he did it. They were not necessarily in order of date, nor is it necessarily a retrospective. But because the paintings are so big, it's not easy to find a gallery that would show large paintings. So visual lent itself to that space. And now the big exhibition, the big room is still going to be open until the 15th of January, but the menopausal paintings at the back room, they'll be taken down on the 8th of January because there's other exhibitions coming on. But yes.
The menopause finishes early.
Yeah. Now some people don't even know about the back room because it's all very discreet, because it's really for adult content. A lot of people don't go in there, and we have signs up for people who, if people don't want to bring in their children, that's fine. But the main big hall will be on show until the 15th of January. And I have some pieces of work by Phoebe. My daughter Phoebe has a couple of paintings and some sculptures she's done. And my niece Gillian Lawler, who's a painter, I have a painting of hers, and I have her son's work. He's only 7, and some of my grandchildren's works and grandnieces and nephews. So I just wanted to show people that my other brothers and sisters, my brother Michael and Reuben, our son, and Phoebe, that we have a collection of stuff that everyone has it's a kind of holistic thing,
And for anyone who can't actually get to Carlow to experience the exhibition for themselves, or even those who do go there and they'd like to have a little takeaway from there, there's a book that goes along with the exhibition as well, Elizabeth.
Yes, John O'Regan, who is in charge of Gandon Editions. John is such a lovely man to deal with. He made it easy for me. So the book is mainly on the paintings in the exhibition. There's a bit of an overlap from the other book, but it's essential to have it, I think. And there's also the film by Ross Kavanagh, which you can see. There's a link, I think, onto the visual website.
And that film was basically a conversation with you, Elizabeth. And I know we see some of the exhibition there, but we also see you in action in Shankill and your own studio and everything else. And for someone who doesn't know you, it gives a really lovely insight into Elizabeth Cope.
Yes, well, Ross did a terrific job. And then Alan Keane has made films on my work as well with the artists. Alan Keane has interviewed lots of artists, so he's also worth looking at as well.
About a fortnight ago, I was chatting to the director of the Crawford Art Gallery, Mary McCarthy, and I was telling her we were going to be chatting soon, and she was singing your praises, and she thinks you are one of the most significant artists in Ireland. And she said, looking back, she thinks you're going to have even more significance. She's a huge fan of your work.
Well, I have to say the Crawford Art Gallery was so kind to me in 2018. Mary McCarthy and Dawn Williams and William Laffin, and they really gave me a great boost at the Naked Truth exhibition, which they held. They even used my Giraffe Man as their poster. And some wag outside put a magic marker over his, middle part.
Yeah.
That made it more exciting.
Well, for someone who will experience the exhibition or maybe buy the book and look at the wonderful paintings, what they won't have is the benefit of Elizabeth Cope sitting on their shoulder to give us a little bit of insight. So with your permission, can I have a little bit of a chat about some of the paintings and You might give me some insight as to what was going when you paint them, what was going on in your head at the time.
With pleasure.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So the first question I have for you, and it's probably a general question about a lot of your paintings, is all about the nudes, because it's a big theme in a lot of your work and the human form. And just maybe a question for you, Elizabeth, and maybe other artists as well. What's so intriguing about our flesh and bones?
Well, it's interesting. I've always had an interest in anatomy. And even I think for my leaving cert, I did anatomy. And I always liked drawing, of course. So wherever I go, I would always paint things like the skeletons in the Natural History Museum, like the little monkey I referred to. And then when I went to New York, I painted Neanderthal man and a child skeleton and a chimpanzee skeleton. So I'm fascinated with the anatomy, as I said, and I've done some work in the College of Surgeons in Dublin, in the cadavers room. It's not that I have a morbid thing. It's nothing to do with morbidity. It's just to do with shape. And when I'm painting animals and people, you see, the thing is, I paint all subject matter. I don't specialize. And that makes me kind of unfashionable, if you like. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all about paint. To me, the excuse is to put down paint. The paint is my medium. The paint is my subject matter. If you say to yourself, well, I can't paint a head or I can't paint a hand, you're putting a negative. If you say negative things like that, you won't be able to do it. And I don't believe in people who now all draw from photographs. I can't understand why they bother. We have to use our eye and draw the drawing in while the person is moving, the animal is moving. There's more excitement in the line. It's better to draw 3 marks of what you physically see in front of you than 1,000 marks of filling in stuff. And people are not experiencing that feeling. People are intellectualizing art too much. Everybody has to write 20,000 words on art. I've never seen such rubbish in my life. Because, take the High Cross at Moon, for example. You didn't even have to know how to read or write to appreciate the paintings. I am interested in everybody in Ireland coming to see my paintings. And it doesn't matter one jot what form of education they've had. In fact, education has destroyed things for a lot of people. We're over intellectualizing, over thinking things.
And when you are painting a person in the nude, is that more interesting than painting that person clothed?
Not really, actually, but the only reason I paint people in the nude, it's only because of the shape, the anatomy. It's nothing and the color of the skin interests me. And it doesn't matter what color the skin is, it's just another thing. And I suppose painting in the nude is usually painted in the summertime, obviously. I can't imagine painting today.
At the moment.
not today. But it's not that I have a fixation about the nude. I paint all subjects. And of course, for example, Georgia O'Keeffe, the American painter, people were giving out to her for painting. She painted flowers, the close-up of flowers, which resembled female genitalia. I don't know what they were making out, but when I draw the nude, I don't have any ulterior motive except it's just another shape, The word artist is a huge subject, of course, but the thing about the so-called artist is you have to have 2 different veins of thought going through your head. At one level, you have to have the subconscious working. That's really important. And on the other level, you have to draw as if you're like a surgeon. You've got to get the thing down,
Yeah.
So it's a contradictory thing. So that's why I can't understand why people have to see thousands of words. When I go into a museum, I want to see things, objects. Museums are too full of words and people explaining. I don't want to tell you or anyone else what to think of my work. I want you to say, I hate this work or I love it. And it doesn't make any difference what education you've had.
And tell me, Elizabeth, does a little bit of vulnerability come with the subject matter when it is a nude painting?
Well, I suppose, yes. Well, there's an ad on TV at the moment. I think it's on Sky or BBC, I don't know. And there's an Irish woman actually sitting on a loo and using female sanitary products. And in a way, it's not in your face totally, but it's done in a way that everybody needs to understand these things that happen to women every month, and it creates a better understanding that we're getting rid of all these kind of voodoo subjects. It's good to know about stuff, And I think a lot of young men now are getting to know about these things. So it's not meant to be vulgar or to upset people. It's just an open subject that's not frightening anymore.
Yeah, and I think the artist sees the human form in a different
Yes.
way than the rest of us do. And actually, there was an exhibition in the Crowford Art Gallery. Half the people were giggling going around looking at it, you know.
I think that's the one, the Naked Truth one that was in 2018. Yeah. And also, one funny thing happened there. A group of nudists from the Munster region actually contacted the Crawford Gallery and asked them, could they go take their kit off and walk around the exhibition nude? And they asked me, invited me. I said, yes, but I won't be stripping off. So we walked around. They took off their clothes, walked all around. And in fact, it was very exciting. It was the first time in Ireland nudists went to see a nude exhibition. So it was the first time for Ireland.
Yeah, but you didn't join them, Elizabeth?
No, I didn't. No.
And on the subject of the nudes, would I be correct in saying that in the exhibition, some of those will be self-portraits?
Yes, some of them are, yes, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And you see, the other thing I want to say is, as I said in Ross Kavanagh's film, because I'm a woman and because I'm a mother and a grandmother, I don't have the luxury of staying in a studio all day painting. I paint everywhere and anywhere. You know, when Keith Floyd would do cookery, he'd be cooking out on a beach on a very primitive sort of a stove. That's the way I operate. I'm like a kind of a traveling. I could sit down anywhere and paint anywhere along the way or draw. If I were to wait for a quiet moment, I'd never draw or paint because women are multitaskers and that's our real gift. That's what we're good at. So waiting for the quiet moment would never occur if I had to do that. You know, the luxury of a studio, I just go to the studio to assemble the paintings. You know, I paint around the house as well.
Okay, and in choosing the subject matter, I presume sometimes it has to be all thought out. If you want to book someone or book a scenario, you need to make a plan to travel somewhere. But often does that happen that we wake up in Shankill and you get a notion and this is what I'm doing today?
Well, I believe in serendipity and in chance meetings. And some of the people I've painted along the way just came by. I don't plan things. I don't do preview drawings of my paintings. I draw alongside my painting. You know, I draw all the time, but not necessarily of the subject I'm painting.
Okay.
You know, it's Pablo Casals played the cello and the scales all his life, you know, and a lot of people today think like pop stars, oh, I'll be a 15-minute wonder. It's about hard graft. It's about repetition. And, you know, people think, oh, I can draw, therefore that's enough. No, it's not. Practice. It's all about practice.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday and it's about art and artists as in musical artists. And for some reason, and it happens so often that the young musicians, you know, when they're young and raw and naive, they'll stumble upon a fantastic hit. They'll have an album where they're absolutely inspired, you know, some wonderful songs, and they have their huge first album.
Yes.
And here they are 30 years later, having improved their craft, learned more about that art of songwriting and the mastering of the instrument and working with other musicians. But yet, for some reason, now that artist, when they were naive and they weren't an expert, you know, were filling out stadiums, and suddenly 30 years on, they're still a professional musician. But with all of the expertise, they're playing to a room of 50 people.
Yes.
It seems to go the opposite way. I think, but with the artists, it just get better and better. And it's a strange one.
Well, you're putting your finger on it because, in a kind of a way, fame to destroy creativity. I think when the artist is on the back foot and struggling, the struggle is the secret to success. People are always looking for the gin by the side of the pool kind of fun. That doesn't happen. It's if you feel you have arrived, well, where do you go from there? You know, people don't realize if you're struggling, you're a success, because struggle is like wriggling. You know, if you're surviving and getting by, that's the success in itself.
And Elizabeth, the self-portraits,
Yes.
What makes you decide, yeah, today I'm going to paint myself? Are you trying to capture a mood, or is there something profound happening in your life and you want to capture that in a painting? How does that work?
Well, I don't go out, I just paint. I don't try and understand it too much. I think, of course, we all have to dig into our past and try and improve what we have come from or where we have come from. But at the same time, you can have 1,000 feelings in your head in a whole day, And I mean, Benjamin picked those self-portraits. Like Rembrandt, of course, he did. There are at least 56 self-portraits attributed to him. And he was no oil painting. And he had a strawberry nose for a start. But when he was young, there are paintings. And then when he was rich, he was dressed in lovely, rich clothing. And then he got poor. He dressed himself in whatever clothing he had. So in a way, it is a self-portrait. But you don't do a self-portrait for vanity. You just do it because you've no one else to paint,
You're stuck.
Exactly. And you can have 1,000 feelings about anything in your head. Any of us can. And it could be ranging from the happy to the sad, or I don't know why I do the self-portrait. It's not out of vanity, I can tell you that much. It just shows that you can have different feelings in your head at any time.
Yeah. And are you trying to capture something specific in them, in each of them?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, people are looking for deep meaning in my painting. And
You're saying forget about it.
Yeah. But for example, there's a painting with a big yellow measuring tape. In the Nest painting, I said, my God, Elizabeth, why did you use a yellow tape? They were trying to read into the tape. I said, the only reason I painted the tape was because it was yellow. That was the only reason. And then, the 3-in-1 oil, which is my father used to use it for putting on hinges to stop them squeaking. Now you use WD-40. People are looking for too much meaning in things,
The Giraffe Man. What was going on there, Elizabeth?
Well, the Giraffe Man.
Who is he, and what's the giraffe got to do with it?
The Giraffe Man, his name, the model was called Michael O'Dwyer. And I always pay the model. He was a professional model, but he used to be in the British Army, and he served in Northern Ireland. He was just a good model. Sometimes you get models that are not as good, but he was a very good model. And then I cut him out.
What makes a good model?
Well, I don't know what it is. It's just somebody who's at ease with themselves. They're not worried about what you paint. They don't worry. I always find the best models are people who don't care what you paint. Like my father was a great model, and Jeffrey, my husband, because they don't care what I paint. And that makes you more relaxed. Whereas if people think you want a chocolate box image of that person, well, it's not going to work.
So Michael O'Dwyer didn't care one way or the other.
No, I think he might have called himself Dwyer. A lot of people, when they went to England, they dropped off the O or of their name, But he was a good model. And then I cut him out of the canvas, and then I stuck him onto this Pusey background. And then I don't know how, I just thought of the giraffe. It was just another idea for the shape of a chair, if you like. So I have the opposite, the cut out negative part of that. And it's in a little gallery in Picton in Prince Edward County in Toronto at the moment.
And tell me, do the models ever come back just to try and see the result of their posing for you?
Well, actually, I should try and get in touch with him and with Dee, the model, who was very good. Dee is the girl with the lobster on her back, and she was my age, actually, and she was very amusing. And her mother was English, her father was West Indian, and she used to wear a lovely Rastafarian headdress. But I should try and contact her and tell her they're on show. I suppose I should.
So has Michael O'Dwyer seen his painting with the giraffe?
No. I'll try and I should try and contact him again. But life goes on, I suppose. But next time I'm in London, I'll try and find out if he's still modelling.
Yeah, and now I'm picking out some of my favourites and some of the ones that are intriguing me. So there's another, I've described it here, my impression of it. It's a mad, crazy painting with a man standing amongst lots of animals and birds.
That's a recent painting. That was done in last year. I don't know why I started painting animals. You see, I love painting animals, and I've been to London Zoo many times and Dublin Zoo. There's so much you can learn from animals. We don't even know a quarter of what we should know about animals. So I just started painting. One of our artists in residence just came and stood, and Jeffrey beside, and then we have my little granddaughter in the middle. painted all these various birds and animals. I just kept drawing and carrying it. I just got carried away, basically. So I just...
So do you not start with a clear idea, or do you just
Not at
begin
all.
and let the spirit take you wherever it takes you?
Yes, I have nothing planned at all. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say, I have no magic, and I'm like someone, I have no recipes. They're just made up as I go along.
And Elizabeth, you know, people talk about having a creative flow, and before you know it, 10 hours have passed and you don't know where they went. Is that the case with you?
No, because being a woman, I'm always kind of on a timer, but I never had that luxury to be able to just forget about time. And maybe I should. Maybe I'd have much better paintings if I did. But the future is all there for me to discover, Greg.
You mentioned London in our conversation there. London played a special place in your heart, didn't it?
Yes, I think I went to London City Island. I was in the Airbite studio there for about 9 months. And Claudel Goy, she was the director and very good. And they were so nice to me when I came home from lockdown on the 12th of March 2020. I came back to Ireland, and I used to come home every couple of weeks anyway. So, but they were so kind. They didn't charge me too much for the studio, and I held it until September. And then I decided I think this lockdown is going to go on. So I took home all my stuff. So, and some of those paintings are actually at the back of the big room. For example, the one, it was bought by the Arts Council. It's called Last Picnic on London City Island. And there's Sybil is sitting with a owl on her shoulder, and there are swans and an upside down reindeer, and there's sea lions. Apparently, the sea lions could swim as far as the Houses of Parliament. We actually had a visitor here from Norway. When I went to Edvard Munch's studio, I stayed with him, Trina, and his wife, Trina, Frode and Trina. And Frode is in one of the big paintings from the Edvard Munch studio. And he just came especially to see the show. So we've had people from Norway coming here, people from Canada. We can't get people from Dublin to come see the exhibition. I think they seem to think there's an electric fence across Newlands Cross.
Well, you see, in Dublin, they're spoiled. They have everything on their doorstep. So, you know, travelling for anything is normal practice for us country folk.
Yes, I know. It's incredible, isn't it?
One particular painting I was very drawn to. It was a painting of a youngish nude woman surrounded by objects, animals, nature. And I felt she was staring at me. She was sitting very, very powerful amongst all the kind of chaos and everything.
Is it with the blue vase?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, she was called Helen. And that was painted outside obviously on a hot summer's day. Helen was one of the first of the menopausal paintings. Although she was too young to be menopausal, I think. But it's a long time ago now when I painted that. Yeah, some people are intrigued by that painting. I don't know why.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of power in it. It feels like she's staring at you, but she knows you're looking at her. That's the impression I get. She's obviously exposed, but she's so comfortable with it. And I just sensed a lot of power. I'm not sure if that's the way it was.
No, I think that you picked it up rightly so. But I mean, as I said before, quite a strong painting. The cattle are in the field at the back behind her. And then there's the brazier where we have our once a year barbecue session. I mean, people have to read whatever they want to read into the paintings. That's the great thing about paintings. People can interpret it any way they like.
And going to galleries, Elizabeth, I love to see the little note about, when a painting was completed and what inspired the artist. But I think what you're saying to me is you shouldn't even need that, really. Just let yourself flow and take what you want out of it for yourself.
There's a painting, the nude with the 23 teats, and there's the back of a Bush radio, and there's a chainsaw, and she has all her private parts in the air. And this man came in, God, he said, that's a disgusting painting, he said. Well, I suppose I'm not out to shock people. When people laugh at the paintings, that's what I really love, especially women. Older women love these paintings because they know it's funny. It isn't funny, but it is funny in some other ways.
That sounds like a perfect one for over the fireplace.
Yes, I think so.
Or in the kitchen. The couple cutting the cake. Who was that?
Oh, yes. But that was on our wedding day. We're just cutting the cake, and it was, I suppose, a memento. It was on the 21st of May, 1980.
Okay, so in a way, are a lot of the paintings biographical? Or was that you deliberately saying, this is my craft, I'm going to capture that special moment?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I suppose it was inspiring at the time, I suppose, because we were just married, I suppose. It meant something at the time. So it's just a long time ago, and it's just a quick sketch, really.
Yeah, there was a lot of road after that cake cutting, wasn't there?
Absolutely, yes, yes.
You're going to think now I'm totally obsessed with nudes. I'm talking about them so much.
No, be obsessive. It's fine.
There was another beautiful painting of a nude couple holding hands, and I think there was a younger person in front of them. But what drew me to this one was that behind them there was an ironing board. Does that capture life?
Yes, it's quite a big painting. That was painted in our bedroom, and I obviously had the ironing board there. 1982, Phoebe was just a little one. I remember it was in the bedroom in our house then in Rainstown. Phoebe was about maybe 6 or 8, maybe not, maybe about a year old at the time.
It absolutely sounds like, you were capturing moments in time.
Yes. Well, you see, basically, we have to live on two levels. At one level, we have to live as if we're going to live forever. And on another level, we have to live as if we're not going to live very long. We have to live in the moment, if you like. It's not easy to do that, but...
There's a lovely duet of painting. I'm making a big assumption now. Is it Jeffrey on one side and you on the other?
Jeffrey's wearing like a dressing gown, is that right?
Yeah.
And I'm wearing a maroon velvet dress.
Your favourite dress?
Yeah, well, it was then, I suppose. It was a Laura Ashley velvet dress I was wearing. And it was new then, and I just painted the two of us.
You made a big effort. You put on this lovely velvet dress, and Jeffrey just wandered down in his dressing gown. He lets the show down the whole time, Elizabeth.
Absolutely, yes. And the two paintings they have to go together, I think.
But you obviously deliberately decided to do them as separate pieces.
They're quite big. I didn't do anything deliberately. It just happened.
Okay.
As I said, I don't have any plans. You see, if I find a piece of board or a canvas, I'd paint on it, all right. But
yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I know in the exhibition there's a wall with a lot of portraits of various faces and characters. How do you choose who to do a portrait of?
Well, it's just happened. Whoever comes across my path, if I feel like painting them, I'll paint them. For example, when we lived in London for a bit there, a man came to visit and his name was Rose, but in fact, he was one of the first transgender people I ever met. And he was a man in his 70s and he became a nurse. His name was Rose. He had the full operation done. I have two portraits of him. He's clearly male to look at, but he was such a sweet man. I still have the two portraits. So I just paint people, whoever comes along the way. And, I don't paint everybody, obviously. They build up after a while, the amount of paintings,
In each of them, Elizabeth, you seem to choose different colours.
That's only to do with whatever paints I have in my paint box at the time.
Whatever's handy.
Whatever's handy, exactly, yes.
Yeah, and the expressions, there's a wide variety of expressions there. And again, of course, maybe I'm trying to read too much into it.
Yes.
Are you trying to capture or express some particular feeling that those faces looking back at you are giving to you? Do you know what I mean?
Probably, but I don't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
I think...
it really flows through you, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, someone said to me a couple of years ago, and I thought it was a great thing. I might have even said it on your last podcast. When you're 16, 17, they said if we could all carry around with us a photograph of ourselves when we were young and then take it out of our pocket and look at it throughout our lives, especially when we're going through a bad period. I think that would be, because we're all beautiful. There's no question about that. And then if you look at your beautiful self when you were younger, it kind of should give you a little bit of energy to go forward. Giacometti, the famous Swiss sculptor, I love his sculpture because he sculpted his brother Diego lots of times made from clay. And sometimes they were so thin, his men, they were very thin. And life throws rocks at us all, And it kind of breaks us down. It knocks the corners off us. So if you look at Giacometti's sculptures, there was a lovely exhibition of his work in Dublin there in the summer. We went up to see it twice. There were some paintings as well, but he's mainly a sculptor. But the way he's able to, by sheer, I suppose, time passing, it knocks the corners off us, because life does throw rocks at all of us along the way at some stage. And that refines us. And that's why getting older, it should be the most beautiful part of our life, actually, because we have this more, I find very old people are more broad-minded because they've been through so much.
Well, I think with every day you accumulate a bit more wisdom, don't you?
Yes, I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why for me, and I love your vibrancy and your drive. And I was listening to an interview by some American politician, and he was chuckling in a very negative way about Joe Biden and his age. And I was thinking to myself, how dare you, you young pup?
Yes.
His wisdom is dealing with colossal issues, and we can make a judgment about age and what's acceptable to do a particular job. But he was mocking. And you think about the support that they're giving to Ukraine. You think about, him trying to bring people together around huge topics like their own democracy and the climate crisis and everything. And I think he has been a brilliant president. And how dare anyone decide themselves that a particular age is too old? And maybe we, when we have retirement age of 65 and everything, maybe we have this kind of set of parameters in our head about, beyond that age, I'm sorry, no, that you're less of a person or something. In the art world, you and your age, is that an advantage? And I'm saying that not so much as how you view yourself, but how you feel others view you and interact with you.
I totally agree with what you're saying. There's no doubt about it. Wisdom is important. And I do agree with what you said. But I just feel so confident now that I've never felt before in my life. And it's to do with finally your corners are rounded. The sharp edges are kind of rounded, and your view of life is much more, it's from a higher, you're not so small-minded. You're able to see the bigger picture as you get older.
Yeah. On the subject of young, there's a lovely painting of, I think it's a young couple on a couch. The girl has a little notepad or a drawing pad in her hand. Who is that?
That's Sybil and Reuben sitting on the sofa in the drawing room. It was just a thing I just did very quickly. It just happened,
Do people enjoy sitting for you, Elizabeth? No, obviously it's a different ballgame if you're writing a check and it's a model and they're paid to do it. But
well, I think when I paint very quickly, I don't, although maybe I'm a bit slower now in my old age, but normally I paint quickly. So I don't like to, people wouldn't have time to get too bored with me because because I'm actually just as shy about painting them as they are about sitting. So people think that it's just a one-way ticket. It isn't, So I try and paint as quickly as I can, simply because, when you're dancing sometimes and you look down at your feet and then you suddenly can't dance anymore. So painting is like that, you just do it.
Yeah, because when we were with you, you were saying, yeah, I'd love to paint you. And no one in my whole life has asked me anything like that. And I must admit, it made me feel a bit peculiar. And maybe there's a bit of self-consciousness or something, but why would you ask me that? Just out of interest.
I have yet to paint you. I haven't painted you yet.
No, it hasn't happened.
I will paint you. We will let it happen. But the thing is, there's no need to be afraid to sit, because my mother said to me when I was a child, my God, she said, you'd have no friends if you paint their portraits, But anyway, but my mother was a very good-looking woman, and I have my father's nose, unfortunately. But I think the thing about anything you do is if the vanity enters into the painting, then it doesn't work. You have to leave your ego outside the door of whenever you're painting. And I don't go out of my way to make people ugly or anything. It's just you're painting something, a life force in that person. It's really a reflection on the artist rather than on the sitter.
Well, I'm all in, Elizabeth. And if you want to put me next to a giraffe or some other thing, it's all up to you. Do what
Well,
you
you're
want.
number one. You'll be my first person to paint in the new year. How about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a deal. The upside down fox, the birds, the geese, the teapot, the person resting with paper in hand or a notepad, and the tiny little girl then in the corner. What in the name of God was going on there?
This is the last picnic on London City Island. Is it the upside down reindeer?
Yeah, it is
And then
actually.
there's geese. Yeah, and then, in fact, London City Island has been built by an Irishman from County Kildare, and all these high-rise buildings. And it's all a very new thing. You have the Princess Drawing School is there, and you also have the London Ballet is there, and you have all kinds of interesting things there now. And even the film school is there, I think. That river is the River Lee, Lea, which is a tributary of the Thames. So I did the buildings of London City Island, River Lee. It gets very muddy. It's like a muddy river. And then there were swans up and down the river, and there were seals. I didn't see the seals, I must admit. Lots of seagulls, and there are lots of cranes. It means they're still building. And I suppose that's a painting of Sybil. And I was a bit concerned about Sybil because she and Jeremy were about to embark on a trip to New Zealand, and the virus was coming. You see, all the viruses are in the painting. So they went to New Zealand, and it came back with a baby a year ago, which is a great joy to us.
Well, I had the same experience, you know
I know
that.
you did, yes, yes. And Sybil and Brendan, actually, they communicated by email. So that's why I can't wait to meet him and his little baby.
I'll tell you a little bit about that after, but he has to make a trip to New Zealand in the new year for work.
That's good.
He actually did a lovely video there, and he won awards for it.
I know he did, yes. Congratulations.
Really, really good. Your paintings have, for me anyway, they've got a very kind of signature style to them. There was one that I thought was quite interesting, and it was a painting of three people sitting down, all dressed in their finery. There seemed to be one or two kind of characters behind them, but it was a style of painting that I didn't recognize in your other work.
It was painting I did many years ago in the studio in Knocknaghee before we moved to Shankill. Yes, and it's quite a big painting, and I stuck on paper and made black lines. It's Leslie and Jeffrey and Eleanor and her little girl Grace, who is now probably in her 30s now. It was painted in the studio, as I said, in Knocknaghee. They probably dressed up in those dresses so that I could paint them. It's quite a different painting, I would agree.
And while you love going to parties and dressing up and all that kind of thing, I think you love hanging around with skeletons as well. And I know you're talking about that from London. There's one particular painting, and seeing skeletons should be a disturbing thing, but it's a picture of three main skeletons. It looks like there's two men looking up at them, and both of them wearing green hats. There's lots of colour and things going on. Once again, Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you the question. What in the name of God was going on?
Well, the three skeletons, they are from Tyson's chimpanzee, Tyson. He lived 100 years before we discovered that we came from the ape. The chimpanzee died on its way back to England from Africa. So the three skeletons are of the chimpanzee, and I have the three of them in, and that was painted in a studio in Vauxhall Street Studio in London. And the two men on the bottom left, they are two miners who I think were trapped somewhere in Wales in a mine. On the right-hand side, then there's a big seashell, and in the middle, between the miners and the skeleton, there's an electric heater. I always try and bring a bit of kitsch into my paintings, and the background is Vauxhall Bridge Road. And there was a school as well behind them. I could see a school as well through the window of the studio. But I suppose some people call them the crucifixion. I mean, people can interpret it any way they like, But the Tyson's chimp, he's in the Natural History Museum in London. He's very small in the main foyer in a little corner. And I just kind of started painting him. And you see in the background a clothes horse where I would go into the studio. Phoebe actually owned the studio. Well, she rented it, part of it. 3 or 4 people used it. And I'd go in at 7 in the morning when nobody was there. So I had the whole studio to myself. So that was the only time to paint,
another of your characters, I'm going to call him Larry.
Yes.
Larry the Lobster makes an appearance on many. Where did the lobster come from?
Well, he's actually called Rocky the Lobster.
Rocky. Oh, my goodness.
Well, Larry is a good name too. But
Yeah.
one day when Sybil was about 12, do you remember the singing fish craze
I
came out?
do. I sure
You
do.
press the button and you play the singing bass. Well, because the lobster is made of rubber, I still have him and he still works. He sings, he lifts up his two front jaws and he can sing this country and western song. We have them in the gallery in visual. And I think I need new batteries now again. But because he was made of rubber, I was inspired by it because rubber is a natural material. And Sybil said, Mummy, I have a surprise for you. And there were this lobster in the middle of a big plate and lettuce leaves all around it. And she pressed the button and he started singing. So it became a kind of an in thing for me to use then as a motif or as a bit of kit, that keeps you, when you're in someone's house, it's so clean and tidy.
Yeah.
It's too neat. You don't want to be there. It's too perfect. So that's what the lobster does.
And then, of course, Elizabeth takes this lobster, this playful thing that your daughter had stumbled upon, and you used the lobster in quite a different way in another series of paintings.
Yes, there's one painting, and it looks quite vulgar, but it was purely innocent. I was painting Dee, the girl I mentioned earlier, and I had the lobster. I just pushed the lobster in front of her, and it looks like she's either having a large kind of bleeding or something, but it was purely innocent. And we were laughing so much that people came from next door to see what the commotion was. It was just a funny thing. And I just left the painting like that then. People are looking for all kinds of meanings. And it was just an innocent sort of a painting, but it doesn't look innocent.
So this really is the accidental journey of Elizabeth Cope and her life with Jeffrey.
Yes. Well, I think it's like, I suppose the artist, in a way, has to be almost like someone who is tactless. When someone drinks too much, they say all the wrong things.
Yeah.
In a kind of a way, the artist has that thing, but I don't mean that one should go around insulting people or saying terrible things, but if you're going around too careful as well, you have to say things that are outspoken without hurting people if you can. And at the same time, as I said earlier, you have to be like the surgeon to get the thing down. I think it's to do with the fact that I generally paint from life, because that makes it physical and real.
Yeah, and never to shy away from a topic. We have the Menopause series.
Exactly.
I call them the legs wide open series.
Wide open exactly. but then we have to talk about our mental health is just as important. Everything is important. Everything hinges on everything else.
Yeah.
I think talking about things is good and healthy as well.
On the subject of you and your life and being a woman and being biographical, that series, that was a big moment in your life, as it is for so many women. And as you were saying, it goes unspoken, but you took it head on and you represented it in so many ways through your series of paintings.
Yes. And by the way, Greg, while I just remember on the 6th of January, which is also called Women's Day,
yeah.
or Little Christmas,
yeah.
there's a talk in Carlow in visual about the menopause. And it's at 6:30, I think, until 8 o'clock on the 6th of January. And everyone is invited, men and women, of course. But there'll be a gynecologist there as well, I think, to answer questions.
Well, you do know the tradition on the 6th of Jan is for women to kind of go partying. Yes. Not to go to a lecture about menopause.
Maybe not, but this is going to be a fun thing.
Yeah. I'm joking.
We have a couple of nice friends who are dancers, and they taught me how to do the tango for my 50th birthday. And they're such a nice couple. They just teach this as their hobby, if you like, but they're such good dancers. They came for my 50th birthday 20 years ago, and I rang them up recently, but they're both ill. He has shingles and she had some form of cancer, but they're getting better. But I was hoping we'd end the menopausal talk with them doing the tango around the paintings. Wouldn't that be nice?
That sounds very appropriate. They're
a wonderful couple, and I wish them well. And I think they're going to get better. I think they're on the mend now, which is good.
And on the subject of couples, the one last painting I wanted to talk to you about, and I know you were talking about Benjamin curating them.
Yes.
I had the pleasure of being with you and Jeffrey, walking around your beautiful home and your studio, and it's an attack of the senses. There's paintings everywhere. You're just so gifted. And in the gallery, the one last piece that I wanted to talk about was the one that's on the ceiling of the couple.
Yes, well, actually, I only heard yesterday that the man, Sean, had died. And Kay is still alive. I think she must be 93 now. I mentioned them earlier. Yeah, I did that, as I said, before we came to Shankill. I painted that in their house in the 1980s.
I've done that curation job. I hope you're happy with the ones I picked out to chat about. Is there anything you'd like to chat about from the collection?
Yes, well, Phoebe's painting of herself being pregnant is a wonderful painting. It's at the back of the book. And my niece, Gillian Oler, my brother Michael, and the selection of paintings and drawings by my grandnieces and grandnephews. Phoebe's painting is on page 103, and she has done sculpture of Mungo and another friend. And if you look at 102, she actually painted my painting. She did a painting of a painting when we were at Edward Monk's studio. And Phoebe is unusual because she can carve out of stone, and she can also do clay modeling, which is unusual. Most sculptors stick to one thing or the other, The final thing, can I just say, in the menopausal room, I just want to say to people, I got carried away, but you see all the animals around the painting.
Yes.
All the coloured animals. Benjamin wanted me to paint wallpaper, which resembles some wallpaper at Shankill, and I started painting the lobster and then the crab, and he thought I would just do it in black and white. Then I started looking at a book on paintings, on drawings of animals from around the world. So I started drawing freehand different animals. There's a seashell, there's a duck, there's all kinds of animals. There's monkeys, there's snakes, there's birds, there's reptiles, there's all kinds of animals. I'd like people to see the drawings. There's a kangaroo and there's the Tasmanian devil. There's all kinds of creatures. So that's why I want people to see the back room.
I like what you've done, because in a way it helps a flow from one painting to the next in a very unusual way.
Yes, that will be painted over. So I've got the photographer to take photographs of them. They won't be there after the paintings come down. It'll be painted over.
Just to finish up with you, just a few last questions. What drives you at this stage, Elizabeth?
Well, I just don't know, Greg. I suppose I really can't answer that. I think you have to have a purpose and do stuff in life. I just don't know what drives me. Maybe insanity, I suppose. I can't say. That would be one answer, maybe.
Yeah, and another little question I have. On the commercial side of the business, this is your profession. It's a business. When you pick up a paintbrush and you're looking at the blank canvas, does that ever come into your head? Are you painting in a commercial way at any time? Because there obviously is a business side to it, Well,
the thing is, of course, you don't go into painting for any financial gain, but at the same time, it's a good question. And it's the most important thing. I try and hold out for it to get as much as I can, but the glass ceiling hasn't been broken yet for women. We get a raw deal. So I'm going to call myself Fred Blunt from now on and be a painter, and I'll get a much better price. Sad to say, but it's true. But we still have to keep on flying the flag anyway.
Okay. Just talking business and being commercial for a second. If people want to buy your work, what's the best way of going about it? Is it to come to the exhibition? Is it to
Yes, come to the exhibition and speak to the people in the gallery. Even though it's a museum, if you speak to any of the people there, they can look after them.
Okay.
Everything is for sale.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't sure of that because obviously.
There are a few pieces sold to the Crawford Gallery and to the Arts Council, and that's very good. And if people want to buy, yes, go to the gallery and they will look after them. And then ask for Benjamin Stafford and Emma Lucy O'Brien. Yeah. And in Scotland, I have a gallery, and Jill Gerber will look after people if they want to ring her equally.
Can people come to see you in Shankill, when the exhibition is over and everything?
They can come through you.
Okay. And,
definitely.
Yeah. And the book, how can people purchase the book, Elizabeth?
The book, John O'Regan, Gandon Editions. The book is for sale in the gallery in visual. It's €20, so it's not too expensive.
And is the book available via
Yes.
your website as well?
Yes, well, it's via John O'Regan's website, Gandhi Editions, yes.
Yeah.
But I have some books here,
Yeah.
which I could sell for €20.
Yeah. And your own web address, what is that?
Cope.com, yes. But basically, it's better to go to the gallery and to people who are selling my work, Jill Gerber and Visual. You can ask them there.
What are your next projects, Elizabeth? What's in that mad head of yours? Besides this portrait you have to do now. And
that's the most important
come on.
thing. That's the most important thing. Well, January is fairly booked up. I've lots of things to do. I'm invited to do some workshops in St. Leo's in Carlow. I think 4 workshops. And January is quite a busy month. But I said I don't want the paintings to come back home. I want to put them in a boat and float them up to Greenland and let the polar bears eat the corners off the paintings. Something like that.
Yeah, well, I did speak about having something special for over the fireplace.
The thing is, you want a clean slate so you can start afresh. That's really what anybody wants,
It's an interesting idea, isn't it? Having a clean slate and starting afresh. And
I think so, yes.
Every single day when you go about your work, you start with a blank page or a blank canvas, which is interesting.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And you never stop learning. You just keep trying to improve on what you've done the day before, I suppose.
And Elizabeth, as we are heading into a new year and everything, for someone who's really interested in painting, someone who is passionate about it, whether it's as a career or as a hobby, and anything you'd like to say to them,
yes, I would say yes.
New Year resolutions and all that kind of thing. Sometimes I call it a revolution, but anyway.
Well, there's one thing that has that I really think people should do is make their own little notebooks, for drawing on. And I always mention this artist called James Castle, who was from the Midwest in America. I think he died around 1973, and he was deaf and dumb. He couldn't speak and he couldn't hear, and he was extremely poor. He had nothing to draw or paint on. So what did he use? For example, the back of a toothpaste packet, and he used soot, spit, and maybe a bit of lipstick. So what I say to people is draw from life. Draw not what you think you see, but what you actually see. Because drawing is very physical. It's like cooking. People talk about food all the time, but virtual food is no good. It doesn't fill your tummy. The same as painting. Don't use acrylic, for goodness sake, and draw from life. Draw when people are moving, when dogs and cats and people are playing and speaking. Draw when you're sitting on a bus. Draw when you're in a traffic jam. Obviously, for not too long, obviously, but we can all draw mostly. Like most people can sing in tune. So everyone should get out their pencil pads, have a pad in your car or in your pocket at all times and draw. Because I'm sure we can all draw. If you say you can't do something, you won't do it.
And with drawing, sorry, I wasn't even going to go there with this conversation, but I know with therapy,
yes,
that art is a very particular discipline that helps people to express themselves and sort out some problems. So for you and, I don't know, colleagues or whatever, is there that other dimension to it as well that you could relate to?
Well, I suppose it's all therapy, really.
Yeah.
We have a friend in London, a really nice man. He's from Cumbria, and he's a really nice man. And he's an architect, and he employs lots of Irish people. And one member of his family got very ill mentally and went completely, off the rails. And the only thing that brought her back were dogs and animals. So, it's very tactile, the art, but the most important thing is if you set out to do a painting and think of the end product, it's not going to work. It's about a discovery. It's about the doing of it that counts, not the final. If you start thinking the painting is going to be like this when I'm finished, well, that's a recipe for disaster, because it doesn't work like that. It's all about taking one step at a time,
So the new year...
Paint from life, draw from life. Drawing from photographs is a stupid mug's game. Any idiot can draw from a photograph. For example, if I get a project an image onto a canvas, that's what artists do now. And they copy. You can always tell a painting that has been copied from a photograph. And people are encouraging this all the time. That's disaster number one. Draw from life.
Okay.
Draw from life. Of course, they will say you must copy an old master to try and have technique. You can do that once, but it's not. There are 70 I think, art schools in Florence for rich people to go to. And they all turn out these little brown Bovrily kind of paintings. I have no idea what they're talking about.
I think they should invite you, Elizabeth, for a series of talks.
If I say to you, let's have a meal, and you open up a tin of stew and it's like drawing from photographs is like using a tin of stew to make a stew. You know what I mean? I don't see the point. Become a photographer,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Elizabeth, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
And Happy New Year to you.
And I can't wait to paint you. I'll have to paint you before your hair gets too long.
Fair enough.
I like it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. And bye, Jeffrey, as well. Thank you. Take care.
Lots of love to you and Dee and all the lads.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the When Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.